IVM.
So it's been another great week on IVM, where we try to get you the best podcasts that are around. This week on the Pragati podcast, we have management and mint columnist Karthik Sashidhar, who joins Pawan and Hamsani to talk about elections and voting. On Shunya One, we have Sameer Pittalwala, the founder of Culture Machine, talking about streaming content online and ad creation through tech, his journey with setting up Culture Machine. On IVM Likes, we have Abbas, Janam and Naveen talking about the meme culture. On the Vishal Gundal show, Vishal welcomes Vivek Bhargav, CEO of iProspect to Communicate, one of the foremost digital advertising companies in the country. On Keeping It Queer, Naveen interacts with queer filmmaker Pradipta Ray, who opens up about what it was like to identify as trans in a culturally affluent household. On Who's Your Mommy, we tackle the weird advice literally everyone gives to new moms. On Cyrus Says, we have Gauri Devi Dayal, an ace entrepreneur responsible for starting several awesome restaurants in Bombay. On Sonology, a unique agony aunt call-in show, Sonu helps his listeners on how to potty train their dogs. It's been a great week on IVM, and we hope that you can check out as many of these shows as you can. And now let me get you onto your show.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Simblified Shorties, the younger sibling of our otherwise 30-minute plus episodes. And with the flavor of the season, you could say this is like the T20 version of our otherwise Test cricket offering.
That analogy totally works because like T20, you have no idea what the episode was all about 2 hours after you heard it.
Yeah, that's
just
true.
Like a T20 match. And like Test cricket, you politely acknowledge its presence, but stop paying attention to it a long time back.
I think we should consider doing a 5-day simplified episode. Anyway, we don't have too much time since we are on a shorty today and like a condensed version of the usual nonsense that we do. Today we are going to look at a question I'm sure all of you have thought about at some point of time, and it involves Britain.
Actually, there are two major questions regarding England. One is, why did the British ever leave India? And the second is the one which we are going to answer today.
Yeah, and that second question is, why does a royal family exist? Like why? And we are obviously doing this because the wedding, somebody got married, to an American, something happened. And then the world suddenly became cognizant of the fact that the royal family exists. And and then people start thinking, the royal family. Oh, yes, the family that rules England. Wait. And then people do a double take and I have no idea why they exist. What do they do? Where do they come from?
What
function do they serve? And how can I become king? Why is there no king? How come only a queen? So all these questions. So to answer all this, I saw two YouTube videos. So it all started long back, Naren. And please correct me if any of my facts are wrong, because I'm sure you were there at the time for many of these.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. I wrote this episode only to fit in that part. The rest of the show doesn't matter. Anyway, so long back there was a chap called King Egbert. Okay, King Egbert ruled a region of England called Wessex, which is that appendix-like part of England, is the southwest part of England. And eventually he conquered all of England. This was a fairly cantankerous time where everybody used to go at each other's throats with horses and knives. Yeah. And finally he ruled all of England, and then he became the King of England. And that's it. That's simple as that. So it started from there. And from there, this title of King of England, passed down, till finally it reached one family which had no children. So suddenly there was nowhere for the crown to go after this. So this is an extremely simplistic model of what I'm saying. There are entire videos online which you will confuse the crap out of you in terms of how the crown was passed down. People fought over it. Siblings fought over it. Yeah, I mean, it gets extremely, extremely complicated. And eventually things sort of reached a head when there was nobody to pass the crown on to. So the parliament, the British parliament, which has always been complicit with the royal family, in the year 1701, and that's a key year in the whole royal family thing, they passed a law that said, okay, let's formalize this, and they drew up a set of rules in terms of who it can be passed on to, or basically an entire algorithm in terms
for
of...
succession, yeah.
For succession, yeah. Till then it was as simple as, okay, if I die, my son gets it or whatever it is. But that's not always the case. So then what happens if I have no sons at all? So then the crown goes back up and then down another branch of the family tree. So all that sort of thing. So they drew up a set of rules, and basically the upshot of all this was a distant relative of the guy who had just conked off, a person called Sophia of Hanover, was basically told that she would now be the Queen of England. It's interesting as Hanover. It always reminded me of the word handover.
Yeah,
so it's
so
always
the crown
like,
was
works that way. Handed over to Sophia of Hanover.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was that way. Anyway, this 1701 Act was called the Act of Settlement. And interestingly, just before Sophia was about to be crowned the Queen, she died. So the laws kicked in immediately, and so her heir took over. That was King George I in 1714. And all the monarchs have basically come from that lineage ever since, right down to
Our Lady,
Bessie,
yeah.
as it were. Interestingly, the act was passed in 1701, and the first king, as a result of this law, was in 1714. So that's a fair 13 years of implement. We blame the Modi government for slow implementation. So I think so much for British efficiency there. If people are really interested in the history of how it's passed down, so this is in a nutshell how we got from King Egbert to where we are today. It's not really that.
So this is the mechanistic part of why the family exists.
Yeah. So this is lovely YouTube channel called CGP Grey, which explains a lot of stuff around the world with lovely animations and a great deadpan sort of delivery. And he's done this great video of how the crown is actually passed on from King Egbert, even way before, to all the way down to where it is. And it's an absolutely fascinating, how people have fought against each other, how somebody didn't have a child, so it's backed up and then gone to somebody else.
It had such a bloody history.
Yeah,
Actually, monarchy
absolutely.
in Europe has had such a bloody history, and everything in general. I was listening to this terrific podcast by Dan Carlin, which I highly recommend, about how pain was used as an instrument in Europe. Wow. And the kind of horrific things that they used to do. So British monarchy was
medieval Europe was a jolly time. This Sophia of Hanover, interestingly enough, is an interesting person. So there was a time when much before Sophia of Hanover, there was a time when England actually ran out of kings because there was nobody for it to go down to. And then in CGP Grey's words, that's when they decided to acknowledge that Scotland existed. So they basically borrowed a king from there, and that king's daughter was Sophia of Hanover. That was the distant relative. So it's really long, it's really complicated in terms of how the crown has been handed down. And now if and when Queen Elizabeth dies, it's going to go to Prince Charles, who has, is a running joke now. He's the longest ever heir apparent. And once Prince Charles hits the casket, then it's Prince William, and then the cherubic young George, and so on. Do you know that there are close to 5,000 eligible descendants of Sophia of Hanover?
So there's no chance of a sudden shortage.
Yeah, there's no sudden shortage. I mean, as long as they've maintained records somewhere, it's there. Abdication, by the way, is possible, but it's happened only once because the king wanted to marry an American commoner, which was absolutely against the rules of the church. And that's an interesting part, by the way. A lot of people might wonder, how do I become the king or queen, as it may be, of England?
Was it because it was a commoner, or was it because she was a divorcee?
Both, actually. Okay. American, so three, it's a triple whammy, actually. Okay. A quadruple whammy, actually. American, commoner, divorce, and divorce. So it's a double divorcee that our man was after. So the church did not like that. So how do you become the king of England or the queen of England? Again, it's a slightly long, complicated process. But a couple of interesting things over here. Also, a Roman Catholic cannot become
that's enshrined into the constitution.
Yeah. It's enshrined. I wouldn't say. I am not sure if it's enshrined in the constitution as such, but for a long time, the Church of England and the Catholic Church have been at loggerheads with each other ever since somebody wanted to get a divorce. One of the kings wanted, Henry VIII, I think.
Henry VIII,
world famous Henry VIII wanted to get a divorce. The Catholic Church said no chance because that's against our rules. So Henry VIII flipped them the bird and said, I'm starting my own church, which was the Church of England, which is the coolest logo, by the way. It's basically a cross, and that the horizontal line goes on to complete the E. So it's a very cool logo, actually. Many a metal band should take inspiration from there. So that's basically about it. And now the big question, Naren, what does the Queen or King of England do?
Exactly. Now the teleological question. Why the monarchy exists.
So It's a tourist attraction. That's about it. It's just a ceremonial role. They have absolutely no power. They do call upon the Prime Minister, as in they appoint the Prime Minister, or rather they're invited, sort of like what the governor does, I suppose, over here for the Chief Minister. But apart from that, they serve just they serve just a ceremonial purpose. They are the head of state, but
they don't even have powers like our president.
Who
exactly does have a lot of latent powers.
Yes. So none of the, but she's a highly popular figure, and she has. By she, I mean Queen Elizabeth, and by extension the entire royal family, the whole Buckingham Palace and whatever, and the aura around the entire family and the history. A lot of people come to Britain just to, I mean, it's an inescapable part of the tourism over there. So it's not going to go away anytime soon, even though they're...
And I'd like to interject this point to share my favorite trivia about Queen Elizabeth.
Oh, please.
Do you know what her favorite snack is? It is something called Bombay Mix. And what Bombay Mix is chuda.
Yes.
Okay? And she's so possessive about a chuda that the jars that a chuda are kept in, she marks them with markers because she suspects her butlers of eating it.
Wow.
So the level so she's that OCD about it.
And of course, we will end this with our fount of obscure quotes. Naren will now.
So there is one episode in Yes Minister. Yes Prime Minister, I think, in which the Prime Minister, Jim Hacker, has to appoint a bishop. And there's a whole lot of politics behind it, which is what is shown in the in the episode. And he... all of a sudden, Jim Hacker, you know, he's never appointed. He's not a religious guy. He's never appointed a bishop. So he tells the representative of the Church of England that I have never appointed a bishop before. So he politely says, recommended the appointment to Her Majesty, sir. so all the titular whatever roles still stay with.
Couple of because the line of succession was very clear, like if I die, then my son takes over the crown, that sort of thing. That's the origin of the phrase, the king is dead, long live the king. Because the first part of it refers to the guy who's just conked off, and the second part refers to the guy who's... I thought that was fascinating. Yeah. And lastly, if you go in chronological order, the last song ever sung by the Beatles, or recorded by the Beatles rather, is a song called Her Majesty. Which is a very small song at the end of Abbey Road, which, even though it was the second last album, was actually the last to be recorded. And that's a little bit of trivia to end this shorty. Yeah, that's about it.
And see you next week. Stay tuned, stay cool, and
all
stay
that.
in touch.
Stay at home.
He bends down to test the warm water for his bath. He comes here to quench his thirst for a hot shower and some podcasts. You can witness how he enjoys having other people talk about cool stuff in his bathroom. Indeed, it helps him with his loneliness. You can find more of his pieces on ivmpodcast.com, your one-stop destination where you can check out the coolest Indian podcasts. Happy listening.